Now, for our last session of the day, I'm really excited to welcome Dennis Crowley from Foursquare, and also Brian Morrissey from Digiday. Big fan of Digiday's podcasts, which Brian does most of, I think. So definitely subscribe to that. And then our unforgettable cocktail reception afterwards. So welcome, Dennis and Brian.
Right next to you, Dennis. Cool, so thank you. First slide is not true. My name is not Dennis. My name is Brian. This is Dennis. We're going to get into that. It's blinking here in a little bit. Before, are you on?
I don't know. Yes?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So Dennis, let's talk a little bit. I want to get into the data part, but let's talk a little bit about the sort of journey. Don't take me back to the beginning. But like Foursquare and Sound, like 6 years, right? 6 years plus?
Yeah, we started back in really like January 2009, launched in March of 2009. So yeah, somewhere in between 6 and 7, I think.
Okay, so everyone thought of Foursquare, check-in app, badges, games, and stuff like this, and you're like, no, we're actually building this incredibly powerful, contextual, local search engine.
Yes.
Yeah? So explain to me sort of what Foursquare is about today and whether that's really changed versus what people thought about it as 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, let me kind of answer the question backwards. So, the plan from when we started this thing around like my kitchen table in the East Village was never to build this awesome, check-in app. The point was, let's build something that collects little bits of data every single day about where all these people in the world are going. And then let's use that data to build something amazing. We'll use it to build recommendation engines. We'll use it to build pieces of software that tell you how to navigate a city that you've never been in before. That was always the plan. And we knew how to do that because I had another company before called Dodgeball. And we knew how valuable the data from Dodgeball was, but we just couldn't make anything happen at Google. So we said, let's do another thing, another company that makes all this data. But we know it's hard to get people to hit that check-in button all the time, so let's add some games to it. What kind of game? I don't know. We'll put a mayor game in there, we'll put a points game in there, we'll put a badge game in there, maybe one of them will work. And it turned out that like all 3 of them worked, and they worked so well that took over the narrative of the company. So people are like, oh, Foursquare, you check in, you become the mayor of the coffee shop. Was what, that narrative?
Well, like the narrative got taken over by the sort of means, not the ends.
No, because like at the time, like we're enjoying this amazing ride where it's like, man, we built this thing and there are millions of people using it. And there are millions of people that are fighting in the streets about becoming the mayor of their local Starbucks.
Street fight. It was a real street fight.
Yeah, it was violent and it was crazy, but people loved it, right? There were TV commercials focused on Foursquare, but like in the back of my mind, I was always like, yeah, this is great, but like you're not focused on the right thing. The thing is not like how fun it is to play. I mean, that's great and I'm excited about it, but it's like all the little bits of data that we were collecting all the time about where these places are, what's interesting, when are they interesting. If you like this place, you'll also go to this place. People that like this in New York, like this in Austin, like this in Barcelona. And like when we started this thing, there was not one venue, not one place in the database. And then 6 years later, we've mapped 65 million places around the world, 300 million photos, 100 million reviews from people. Like, the amount of data that we have is staggering. And now, like the big part of the company and the challenge for us is like, what do you do with all that data? And if everyone in this room probably knows us for, hey, we make these awesome consumer apps. You might use Swarm, you might use Foursquare, you might use both, you might use neither, but like, oh yeah, you know that we make these apps. And I think what the big opportunity for us is that over the last year, we've been building these advertising solutions, we've been building enterprise data tools, for people to get business intelligence, for hedge funds to trade against. We've been building these API and data points that Twitter and Pinterest and Microsoft and others are building off of. Like we've become this like location layer for everything on the internet. And it's an incredibly powerful and incredibly defensive position for us to be in as a company.
So it's interesting because before we came on, I was listening to a lot of people who are just starting out with their own apps and they're telling their story. And it gets complicated because you're telling a story to a consumer audience, but then you end up having to tell a story to your partners and stuff like this, and it has to sort of match up. But one of the things is the check-in. Like, I mean, did you ever sort of think, well, check-ins are a fad? Because a lot of people say, well, that check-in thing, it's just a fad. People are going to eventually, wise up and realize that maybe they shouldn't be spilling blood over being the mayor of a coffee shop.
Yeah, well, I mean, we heard this since the beginning. This is just a fad, just a fad. And I'm like, that's fine. If you want to think that the app, that the game is just a fad, that's fine. But the thing that is never going to get old is that millions of people every day are self-reporting their location. I went to the Starbucks, I went to the bookstore, I went to the Macy's, and that's happened, 7 billion times around the world, and it happens, 6 or 7 million times every day. Now, the thing is, if we were still only doing the check-in, like I would let you guys all make fun of me all day long, but what we've built over the last couple years is the ability to do basically what we call them visits, or we call them P check-ins, like passive check-ins, which is, I can have my phone in my pocket. I'm fishing for my phone. I can have my phone in my pocket, just walking around Soho, go inside of the Burton store, the snowboard shop, and it knows, even if I didn't take my phone out of my pocket, even if you keep it in your purse or your backpack, you spent 7 minutes here. And where'd you go afterwards? You went to this French bistro and you spent 40 minutes. And then you went to a Starbucks, then you went to JFK, and then you were in Barcelona and you spent a week there. Like, we can just understand where these devices are moving throughout the world now, and you don't need to check in.
So you're not prisoner, because I think that's one of the sort of misunderstandings of a lot of people with Foursquare, is they think you're sort of a prisoner of the check-in. Now, I mean, I want to get into you splitting the app,
yeah.
But I mean, very clearly, you do not need, with all the data that you're collecting, you don't need people to be checking in constantly.
Well, it's nice to have all the check-ins, because the check-ins teach us about new businesses. They teach us when businesses open, when businesses close. Like, it's a piece of data that we have that no one else really has. And the reason that we can do all the things that we're doing as a company now is because we have all that data. We have all this, we have all this check-in signal, which allowed us to make this map of the world, which then allowed us to do this thing with the visits, where your devices just end up walking around. And the reason you don't see other companies doing what we're doing is basically they can't. And they can't do it because they don't have the map of the world, our map of the world, and they don't have the map of the world because they don't have people that have hit the check-in button 7 billion times.
So are you seeing people, I mean, I always hate to use myself as like an example, but I was like an early Foursquare user, and I was a mayor, and I got badges. I'm a proud owner of the Brooklyn Forever badge. And then I sort of like lost interest in it. But what I did keep using Foursquare was, and I think this is sort of the original thing, was I go to a new city. I was in like Tokyo like 3 weeks ago, and I opened up Foursquare because I've never been to Tokyo before,
yeah.
And I needed to find a place to go eat like dinner after just the ride.
Foursquare is amazing in Tokyo. It might be like the best foreign city that I've been to in terms of like a Foursquare experience. Now, I don't know why, if that's just because there's like, a ton of English travelers that have been there and left tips behind. They're super psyched about it. But I was there in January, and I was walking through the Harajuku neighborhood, and I didn't even have my phone in my hand, and my pocket buzzes, and it's Foursquare, and it's like, hey, your phone has never been to the Harajuku neighborhood of Tokyo. Here are 3 places you should check out while you're on this street. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the thing that we started the company to build. And like, we're doing it. We send, a million of those messages every single day, but we got to send like 10 million. We got to send 100 million of them. Like, we're building this engine that can understand where your device has been, know about all the interesting things nearby, and then help you find them by us tapping you on the shoulder saying like, hey Dennis, this is the thing you need to pay attention to. It's 500 yards on the left. It's like the best coffee shop you'll ever go to. That's the thing that we've been trying to build forever. And the reason you don't see other people doing this is like, it's really freaking hard. And you need to have built all the technology and all the data that we've had in order to pull it off.
So explain to me the decision, because I think that's been the sort of vision, and now it's coming to fruition. But explain to me the decision to split the apps. You guys decided to split the sort of check-in, badges, gamification thing off into Swarm, and then keep Foursquare as the local search engine.
Yeah, so we split. it's about more than a year ago. What month is it? October. It's like a year. Let's call it 14 months ago. And really, what would happen is we hit this point with Foursquare where people were just confused about what you were supposed to do with the app, right? You'd meet people and they'd say, hey, I never check in, but I use the search all the time, but I feel like I'm doing it wrong because I don't check in. I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to check in. It's fine. And then we met people that would, check in everywhere they went, but they never even knew we had a search product. And I'm like, how do you not? I mean, we have like 50 people working on this. Like, there's a search box right at the top. How'd you not know? And it was just confusing to people, which is why we ended up breaking into 2 use cases. And that was a really risky thing, and it was, it took us a while to like really wrap our heads around the implications of it. But now, like a little bit more than a year later, like check-ins are higher than they've ever been. The number of people that are searching for things on a regular basis higher than it's ever been. And both of those apps are performing super well, and it makes it so much easier for us as a company and for our marketing team to say, this is why you use Swarm, this is why you check in, this is why you use Foursquare, this is why it's interesting.
But is the company equally focused on both? Because I remember when you first, when you split it off, I was like, oh, well, Swarm's not going to get the attention because the money is with Foursquare, the real potential.
The thing is, the money is not in either Foursquare or Swarm. The money is in the data that the apps collectively gather. And so, Swarm gathers lots of check-ins, Foursquare gathers lots of reviews. All the apps, they collect so much signal about where people have been. They confirm were they there, they leave photos and tips behind, do they like a place or not, which places are connected. Every time that you open your Swarm app and you check in, we scan, what are the nearby beacons that we see? What are the nearby Wi-Fi things that we see? And this is the Wi-Fi fingerprint, this is the beacon fingerprint, this is the GSM radio fingerprint, this is the GPS fingerprint that's all tied to Toys R Us. That's all tied to the Starbucks on this corner. That's all tied to this version of Macy's. And so you're not just checking in and sharing it with your friend, you're helping us build this map of how cell phones see the world. And it's that map of how cell phones see the world that's powering all the stuff that we're doing with helping advertisers figure out, hey, how do I target someone that's been to a bar 3 times this month and an airport in the last week? How do I target, how do I measure the effectiveness of someone that saw a Toyota ad and did they go to an Audi dealership or did they actually go to the Toyota dealership?
So how much of this is inferred? Because you have to infer a lot, right? Because it's not just check-ins.
It's not. So we get about 7 million check-ins per day. We get about 20 million visits per day. And so when you chart this out, the number of check-ins over the course of the history, it's like up. It's kind of like flatten out 6 or 7 million check-ins a day for a while. And if you look at visits, which is we had to build this technology in order to understand how devices are moving, we have to build it into the phones, we have to make our map of the world. When you do that, you start to see this huge incremental growth in the number of visits that we understand. Which phones have been to which places? And that's 20 million of those things per day. It's a staggering amount of data.
So I think you have an example about the McDonald's you wanted to flip through that
can I show you real quick?
illustrates this. Go ahead.
I'll show you 2 things. Maybe I won't. I feel like I'm like my grandmother. How do I make the clicker work? So let's see if this works. This is what. Is the video going to play? I pointed it somewhere. When it plays, it's really magical. Oh no. I'll go back to. This is what every city, there's 4 cities here. Every city every day looks like this through the lens of Foursquare, right? The different colors represent different categories. There's supposed to be a clock. I think it got cut off. It shows 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, going all the way through the day. But every single city around the world lights up for us, letting us know where are these devices, where were they going to go. And of course, based off that, we can start to predict things. Let me go 2 forward. This is, we just did this thing where I'm going to pause this a second. We did this thing where we were, we took a look just to kind of have fun with this. McDonald's is doing breakfast all day long now, and Taco Bell launched a breakfast menu. And we were debating this internally, which restaurant do you think is going to be the breakfast champion? And I was like, why do we just have to theorize? I bet we can dig into the data and figure it out. And we end up looking at, we have 14,000 McDonald's across the US. Every single one of them ends up looking like this. On the bottom, you can see that's Sunday. You're going to see Monday in a second. Then you're going to see Tuesday. The purple dots represent signal that we end up throwing away. The blue dots represent like when we actually know someone's there. The shapes that you see is like the shape of the McDonald's based off of the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth fingerprint. So like it's not a square. It doesn't look like an architectural building, but this is how the McDonald's looks to your cell phone, to your iOS phone, to your Android, to your BlackBerry or your Windows phone. Like every phone sees the world in a different way. And we've just got these maps for everywhere that we go, and like we did this for Taco Bell as well. It's like, let's look at all of the different Taco Bells. Let's see like which parts of the day are interesting. Let's see if they're getting any lift. This is like a fun experiment for us to do. But I don't know if you saw this a couple weeks ago. Like we did this to predict the number of iPhones that would be sold on opening weekend. And Wall Street was what was the number? I think it was 13 million. Wall Street's like, there's no way they sell more than 13 million. There's no way. And we looked at our data, and it's like, based upon the lift that they've gotten historically, and based upon the foot traffic that we saw over the weekend, they're going to sell more than 13 million. And we were the only ones that got it right. And so we're like, we don't even work in finance, and we're really, really good at this stuff. And so that we make that announcement, and that starts opening people's eyes, and they're like, what else can you do with this stuff? Like, I'm trying to, trade on the financial markets, and I need a one-up about like, did this retail partner do better or worse? I'm trying to get some competitive intelligence about like, is this the best place to put this coffee shop, or should I put it a couple blocks away? And people look at this data that we have for these like 65 million places, and it's like where devices are moving in real time. It's just fascinating.
So I guess, you have a lot of depth of data, but I wonder about the breadth, because I would say like someone from like Taco Bell or McDonald's would be like, okay, well this maps of, what's this?
This is one random one in Chicago.
Okay, Chicago, or it's New York, or maybe it's San Francisco. It's not Indianapolis.
Yeah.
How is that not an issue? That like, the Foursquare users typically are people on the coast, probably New York, then San Francisco, then major cities.
It's funny, you would think that. Like these two examples, this Taco Bell and the one, the McDonald's I showed you, that's Chicago, but we actually looked at, the 6,000 Taco Bells we have and the 14,000 McDonald's we have. Because we can just pull all the data for all of them and normalize it and take a look at it. You would think like, oh, it's got to be just the hipsters in New York and San Francisco that are doing this. But the distribution is pretty even throughout the US, and you'd be surprised how much of it comes from the rest of the world. About 85% of Foursquare users in usage are outside of the US. So this is the thing that's really surprising, is that we see that people adopt Foursquare as basically in the same way that we would use Google Maps here in New York, but they use Foursquare for this in Istanbul, in Japan, and parts of Southeast Asia, all throughout Brazil, because it's real people mapping the roads. Like these products just don't work as well abroad, and people have been turning to the things that we've created. And so we see this great distribution around the world, and we've got enough of an even distribution across the U.S. that we can make these like incredibly accurate predictions. With a solid representation of the U.S. population.
So how are you then using that for business right now? There's a lot of different ways you can slice up data, but it seems like you're pretty intent on not just showing ads to Foursquare and Swarm users.
Yeah, the strategy for a long time, and this is kind of the growth period that you go through as like an internet company. It's like, we have this awesome idea. How are you going to monetize it? We're going to put ads in the product. Sweet. You got to get to 100 million users before you start to really make money off of that. And there's a handful of companies that do that. Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, like they have hit that level. Like, are we going to do that? Like, Swarm is kind of a niche thing, Like, I love it, but it's not for everyone. Foursquare, like, people use it, a couple times a month. They're not like doing it every single day. So we may never hit 100 million users in the US. But the thing is, we don't have to, because we can take the data and we can start to help other companies with other audiences start to monetize that.
Even if they don't use or touch any of your apps.
This is the big thing that's changed this year for us, is we've figured out a way to decouple the user growth of both of the apps in the US and outside the US from the revenue growth. And the way that we've done that is by creating these data offerings that other companies, can purchase from us.
Is it like lookalike? I mean, explain exactly how you're using the data to model it, to extend it.
Yeah, so let me explain how it works on the ad side. We have this product called Pinpoint. And what we heard from advertisers all the time is they would come to us and be like, we love Foursquare, we love the segmentation, we love the geo-targeting. I need to spend $500,000. I need to buy all the inventory. And I'm like, that's a hard sell, giving all these other advertisers, the US market, where is it going to be relevant? And so we had a hard time filling that for people. And so what we did is we ended up using a lot of our technology in partnering with other ad networks. So other ad networks will feed us the lat longs that they're getting from these exchanges. And normally a lat long is just, hey, we know this user's in Manhattan, we'll show them an ad for someone that lives in a city. And instead, we take the lat long and we say, no, this isn't just a lat long. This is a user that was at a Starbucks, and then yesterday was in San Francisco, and then a couple days before that was going to the gym 3 days a week. And so based off of that, what do you want to serve to this device ID? And so we serve that back to the advertiser, and they're able to do much more sophisticated targeting. And that's been a huge, huge win for us. We just started this in, I believe it launched in April of this year, and that product is selling phenomenally well. It's called Pinpoint. I'm not sure if anyone here is actually using it, but it's doing very, very well for us. And so that's one on the advertiser side. The second is if you're using Twitter in your geotagging tweets, you're using Pinterest in your geotagging pins, if you have a Windows phone and you're asking for recommendations on Italian restaurants, we're powering those services for these companies whose geo is not their core competency for them. And when we do that, we're getting the data back, which is making our whole model smarter too. And so there's been the sophistication that our business, our company, our organization has achieved just this year in the way that we think about it, to couple the user growth from the revenue growth, has been a huge, it's been a big transformative moment for us as we really start to figure out how this thing works for the long term.
So what are the current challenges? I meig guess getting the data science right, because you said it's a big, hard problem, would have to be number one, right? And
the big challenge is technically, to do this stuff is very, very hard. And we're very fortunate that we have an amazing team. We've got all these folks that have spent a lot of time within Google, other amazing organizations. We have amazing people, and you need amazing people to do this stuff. But I'll tell you, it's really, really hard for us, we're 190 people, to compete against Google that has 3,000 people trying to solve this problem. Facebook that has another 1,000. Apple, who's got who knows how many people that are building all of this stuff in the next generation of the OS, and I don't have the keys to Siri. I want to play with that. I want to make something awesome, but I can't do that because I'm an independent. We're independent right now, and so for us to compete for talent, retention, technology, data, mindshare, that's tough. We're a 190-person company in New York that's competing with these giants out west. We almost have no business competing with these guys because these are the best companies in the history of tech. But no one can do the stuff that we can do because people have been kind of ignoring us for the last 5 years with the check-ins. It's really kind of gratifying. It's I can't believe you guys were poking fun of us for all the check-ins at the coffee shops. It's what makes the whole thing work. That's kind of a fun position to be in.
So I would guess, that would be number one. Is perception still number two, or does that not matter?
Perception in terms of, we run into this a lot. I'll sit next to people on a you're right? I sit next to people on a plane, and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I work at Foursquare. And they're like, oh, the check-in company. And I'm like, no. But then it takes me 5 minutes to explain to them what it does. So in order to really change the perception of the brand, it's a big marketing challenge. And you need big marketing dollars to do that. And we're doing little bits and pieces of it, but we're not going to do some huge campaign. But the good news is that, the swarm growth has been awesome in the US. People love it. People are adopting it. People are telling their friends. And then, we see stuff like this on Twitter all the time. And this meme is just making it around. I see 10 of these every single day from people. Users teaching other users, people teaching other people about why you should use Foursquare and not use Yelp. And this sums it up, right? It's Foursquare knows where you've been, it gets super smart, it knows what everything in the city, it tells you what to do. And in a way that just a lot of other companies can't do.
We have a couple minutes. I want to open it up to questions. Dennis? There's one in the back.
Sorry if I'm hyper. I ate like 3 cookies before I came out here. I'm also like super excited. Like this is like a fun stage for us in the company.
It's not just the cookies talking.
Yeah, it's not just the cookies. Yeah.
Hey guys, hey Dennis.
Hey.
So you guys are a massive company. You hit all kinds of different markets, from consumer, web, to data, to advertisers, everything. Going back to the beginning of Foursquare, if you had to, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
What I've done differently. To be honest, I'm not sure if there's anything I would really do differently. But I can tell you the thing that I think about all the time is like, we're doing exactly the stuff that I thought we'd be doing, but I actually thought it would all work in 2011, and it turns out it didn't work until about Q4 2013. So we were about 2.5 years late off of our prediction of when it was going to work. And 2.5 years is a long time in startup land to like stay alive, to stay relevant, to compete. You know, Apple, like when the iPhone, what was it, the iPhone 5S came out, that was supposed to be the one that could do all of the awesome geofencing, and it came out and it didn't work. The battery burned really quickly, the geofencing was lousy, and we had this moment in the company, it's like, holy shit, like if we want to do this, there's only one, no one's going to build it for us. Like we have to build it ourselves. And that, I think, was the moment where we got super serious about, we are a technology company that has to compete with with the biggest players, because no one else is going to build the things that we need. And I mean, if anything, I'm very happy that we noticed that then, and we really doubled down on it, because it's the only thing it's the thing that made the company what it is today.
Okay, I just got flashed the overtime
Sorry
sort of
about
thing. So we're going to have to wrap it up there, but thanks a lot, Dennis.
This is fun. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.